Okay, we are recording from now on, so Youssef, whenever you want, you can start.
Okay, thank you, Roberto. Let me welcome you all, and thank you for joining. And let me first of all thank the conference organizers to accept our call, our proposal for the workshop. Thank people who prepared for this workshop, especially Roberto, Margaret, Abdullah and his team from Somaliland, and all others. And thanks to the speakers. Too quickly, because the agenda is very tight and we have many speakers. This session comes into 3 parts. But let me first, the main 2 words coming in this are FAIR and then ASREN. But between that, there are many things that we will discuss today. Mainly, let's say ASREN is originally is a regional research and education network that works for developing research and education infrastructure and services to the communities in the Arab region. And also, it's a partner with other similar regional organizations like Giant in Europe, Western Central Africa, ASREN, Internet Alliance, and in East and South Africa, and in addition to Red Clara in Latin America, and so on. So we are a regional network where we work directly with the NRENs at each country in the National Research and Education Networks. What are these NRENs about? If we talk about FAIR and access and so on. Actually, part of our mission as a regional, as the Research and Education Network is to support science, to support research and education communities. This comes through services, through bringing them all the value for them to better collaborate and better access data and information and infrastructure. So when it comes to science, you can see science comes for diplomacy, science for development, but our focus is science in terms of open science, open data, and open access. And therefore, in addition to open science platforms and so on, all this requires an engagement with the research and with the librarians. In addition to our engagement with researchers and research communities and educational communities, we are now more engaged with librarians and data providers and so on. Especially, we have a project, LibSense, which I think will be mentioned later on. I don't want to go into details because it will be left to our speakers and the presenters. But we are here to help all beneficiaries or all users from our services to support them. One of our targets is to have an open science cloud like the one in the Europe and so on. So we are working on this, but before that, we want to promote the culture of open data, open access, fair compliance, and all of that. To avoid getting this kind of introduction, it's a matter of introduction only. You will see the details in our presentation later on. So as I said, our workshop actually comes in 3 parts: the introductory part, then the brokerage session, and then the hands-on. So let me start by the first session, and which I already made the introduction. Now, the second part is about ASREN's effort towards a fair, compliant commons in the ASREN region. Before going to the coming sessions and speeches and so on, I would invite everyone to keep muted unless he is speaking and so on. And I would like to invite the speakers also to try to stick to the time allocated for them. Raed, actually, he's supporting ASREN in our way to the open access and open science and so on. He's engaged with most of our communities in Europe, in Africa, in addition to the Arab region. Let me first send my condolences to my brother and colleague Raed. He lost his nephew yesterday, and even though he is committed to come and participate in the so Raed, I think all of our colleagues here are joining me to send their sincere condolences to you and to your family. And I will leave it to Raed to speak for 10 minutes, please. Raed.
We see your slide, right, but we cannot hear you.
Hello?
Yes, now yes.
Yes,
Go.
you can hear me. Okay,
Yeah, yes,
great.
yes, go on, go on.
Thank you again, Engineer Yusuf, for your warm welcome and warm greetings. I'll start my presentation. I'll try to be fit to the time. We'll talk about ASREN efforts toward a fair, compliant commons in the ASREN region. This is thank you again for the conference organizers for giving us this opportunity. I thought it will be good if we highlight the origin of fair data, as most of you know that the ASREN and the principles of fair were defined very recent in 2016 with a paper in the Journal of Scientific Data. Details are in the link of the article. Before that, there were a kind of articles, reports, and thoughts about adopting fair. Maybe the most important was the statement of the G8 Science Minister statement, where they were talking about open scientific research data that should be easily discoverable, accessible, intelligible, usable, and this is the core of FAIR principles. As you all know, these are the definition of FAIR. The guidelines are provided in the article, published article in 2016. And I'm not going to go in details about FAIR, which should be findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. Well, talking about FAIR also lead us to open data, and whether FAIR or open data are correlated. For sure, data can be fair or open, both fair and open, or neither any of them. But the greatest benefits come when data are both fair and open, because this way data can be reached in easy and without any restrictions or limits. FAIR will always have essential components, which are policies, data management plans, identifiers, and standards, and repositories. And actually, in these components comes the efforts and where players in the community of research and education can contribute in establishing or in supporting a fair compliant commons in general, either in policies, either in the plans themselves, either in adopting identifiers and standards, supporting and running repositories. For ASREN, as you know, as one of the regional research and educational networks in the Arab and Africa region, I will talk briefly about the efforts of ASREN. I will talk about the License initiative. I will also talk about collaboration with DataCite and ORCID, collaboration with La Francia, collaboration with UNESCO, and collaboration that has been started recently with OIRS. License initiative is an initiative launched in 2016 in Africa, under the Africa Connect 3 projects to bring research and education network in research and educational networks in the Africa region, and to make links between these networks and the academic libraries, communities, to support open science, open access initiatives and practices. The LibSense initiative is led by ASREN, West and Central Africa Research and Educational Network. Partners are ASREN, which represent the Arab world and North Africa as well, and the Open to Not Alliance as well. There are other important and supporting partners in this initiative. Several national research and educational networks are supporting, libraries as well, library association, universities, QUAR as supporting for open repositories, IFL, University of Sheffield, National Research of Informatics in Japan, Giant, and Open Air as well. Why libraries and why research and educational networks are thinking of libraries? Because libraries are becoming involved in more aspects in the research and education environment, rather being traditional libraries to avail printed materials or even electronic materials. Because libraries are promoting open access right now, publishing services started to be set up. Of publishing services started to be in libraries, developing management policies also as well, and repositories and institutions and at country levels are running by libraries. We have these outcomes from the LibSense initiative so far. We have the terms of reference for national research and educational networks and library collaboration. We have metadata guidelines for repositories, where these guidelines are helpful and will continue to be helpful in adopting fair, compliant commons. Plans for regional repositories, hosting services, national and institutional policy templates, and as you can notice, these outcomes for sure will be part, a supporting part for the fair, compliant commons. LibSense contribution, ASREN's contribution to LibSense. We have federated discovery systems. We have a workshop conducted in 2019. After 2 other workshops, we have the priorities that have been serviced are federated discovery systems for the region, increasing the value of Arabic content, shared content hosting platforms, advocacy, training, and other activities. We have also conducted the LibSense virtual workshop in October last October. We have our 3rd workshop as well at EH conference in December last year. We continue to promote open access trends in the practices as well. Also, ASREN's contributes in LibSense work groups supporting infrastructure, co-designing, capacity building, operators as well. ASREN is always addresses the importance of persistent identifiers. We have several technical awareness sessions and training for staff and library research communities. We hosted an important workshop in each conference, and we are also with our other partners continue to have continuous discussions with DataCite, ORCID, and we aim as a regional research and education network to be percent identified as providers and enablers in our regions. We started collaboration with the La Referencia recently. La Referencia are adopting harvesting platform in Latin America, and we aim under the license initiative to benefit from their experience in this target. We are now in a middle of pilot project where are technically evaluating the referencia setup. Okay, I will stick with the time. And based on the ASREN feedback for this evaluation, we hopefully and have there is a potential to participate in the internationalization of the referencia setup. Collaboration with UNESCO, we always contribute to UNESCO recommendation, adopting UNESCO recommendations for open science. We have license statement on open science in Africa under the license umbrella. ASREN always shows the commitment for open science platforms in the Arab region. We have continuous discussions with UNESCO to support developing national roadmaps in the Arab region, Arab state open science clouds, policy development workshops. As I mentioned, collaboration with the OSC has started recently in March this year. ASREN became an observer for member at the OSC association, and we already started to be participating in OSC advisory groups and task forces, and we hope this experience will be very useful and actually it's very essential for us and other license partners as well. Thank you so much. I hope I didn't take more time than allowed.
Actually, you did. You take two minutes, but that I count them from my time. So thank you again. And
I will stop my sharing my screen.
Actually, it's something that we want to share. So you shared things that are very important for everyone, at least from what ASREN is doing. So let me, if you're right, let me invite now our best colleague, since we have been working for a long time in various projects, our friend Roberto Barbera from University of Catania, INFN at the University of Catania. He will be speaking about a standard-based and scalable digital asset management system to turn on fair compliance digital repositories. Roberto, please.
Yes. Thank you very much, Youssef, and good morning and good afternoon again to everybody. So in this short presentation, I'll introduce some concept that drove us to the creation of the INFN Open Access Repository, which is based on the latest version of Invenio and on Zenodo, which is very well known general purpose repositories, at least in Europe. And I'll show you how this has been used to turn on fair compliant repositories in Africa. And we also are collaborating with the Middle Eastern region, with the Arab region through ASREN. And then I'll summarize very briefly. So if we talk about open science, there are different schools of thought about open science. And open access, open data, and data repositories, as Raed already said, are key enablers of open science. When we talk about open access repositories, we talk also about FAIR principles. And it's very important. One of the most important fair principle from the point of view of reusability of research is the possibility to assign both to data and metadata unique and persistent identifiers. And I'll talk about that later on, and that will be a devoted presentation from DataCite on this. So you have these open science enablers, and you have FAIR principles, and you have also a long list of digital asset management systems that you can share across and select what you like most and install. But I mean, if you will look at the past years and also at what's going on very recently, the distribution of open access, open data, and open educational resources repositories across the world is very uneven. And Africa and the Middle East show a gap with respect to the rest of the world. And if we look at FAIR compliant repositories, the repositories which are FAIR compliant are even less. And I'll come back to this point later in this presentation. So at the Italian National Institute of Nuclear Physics, we decided to select Invenio as a digital asset management system, and we started in 2014. In 2019, we moved from the old version of Invenio to the new one, thanks also to the fact that the Zenodo code was made available under an open license on GitHub. So we took Invenio and Zenodo, and we created the pilot of the open access repository. It is intended to be a single entry point for deposit of research outputs of many kinds, and we worked a lot on standard compliance and certification. And actually, the repository is registered in many registries like Open Archive Initiative, Open Door, Open Air, and so on. So specific functionality that were added to our repository were full containerization using Kubernetes as container orchestration and Docker containers. Federated authentication. The repository is a service provider of the Interfederation Edugain, and we also support with a guest identity provider, so-called homeless users. And we worked a lot on the possibility to make the repository fully parameterizable and customizable. And also on FAIR principle compliance and the Plan S requirements compliance. And for FAIR principle, this is done especially for the principle that I cited before through the use of DataCite DOIs. So coming to the fact that in several parts of the world, we have a gap in open science paradigm uptake and open repositories uptake. We think that one of the key advantages of open science is science reusability. And this should not be different for scholarly publications and data infrastructures. These two should comply. And this is what we have been investing a lot on making our repository easily installable and deployable. And we created a synthetic procedure to replicate what we have done. And we are actually working with several research networks across Africa to install clones of our repository. We did already in Ethiopia, in Somalia. We are working closely with the virtual university in Cote d'Ivoire. And as Raed and Youssef said, we are also trying to collaborate with ASREN and especially with the Islamic University of Gaza in Palestine to deploy a pilot of such a repository. So let me summarize my presentation. FAIR principle compliant repository are key enablers of open science. And through the fact that you can link data and publication persistent identifiers to researchers' persistent identifiers, namely ORCID IDs, repositories can improve visibility of researchers and researchers across Africa and the Middle East. The INFN open access repositories, which is based on Invenio and Zenodo, is reusable from the ground up and easily deployable wherever it's needed. And the experiences in Ethiopia and Somalia are very positive. I mean, there are a couple of presentations next to mine in the program today, and have triggered actually interest in Cote d'Ivoire and Palestine. Opportunities for collaboration will be outlined in the rest of this session, as well as in the brokerage session. And in the hands-on tutorial, you will actually be able to access and use one of the instances of this repository to store your own research outputs. So you will see along the duration of the workshop how this has been done and can be useful for researchers and researchers output in Africa and the Middle East. Thank you very much, and back to you, Youssef. I hope I kept my time.
I always speak to myself, so I was muted. I'm sorry. Now, as Roberto said, we have two examples. Let's go for the experience from Ethiopia with our speaker, Bihenu Korma. Sorry if I misspelled the name. You can speak your name correctly, please. So it's yours now.
Biahilu, I gave you the right to share your screen. I don't see it online right now. Maybe we can move to Somalia and then come back if maybe Biahilu has some problems.
Okay.
Mohamed,
let's go to experience from Somalia with our speaker, Muhammad Ali Ahmed.
I'm giving him the presentation privilege. Okay, Mohamed, please. Mohamed, your microphone is muted.
Sorry about that. Hello, everyone. I am Mohamed, and I work with Somaliland as systems engineer. And I am very honored to be with you to present Somalia's experience in deploying Solar, a fair principle compliant digital repository. As you know, the purpose of this brokerage event is to promote fair compliant commons such as digital repositories and persistent identifiers for both researchers and their research outputs, and as well as bridging the gap between the gap in the openness of research and the visibility of research outputs. By the end of this brokerage session, I hope we will have an increased awareness and better understanding of open access and fair principles compliant commons, existing open access repositories in the region, and the available support in our community, ASREN community, in respect of deploying and maintaining an open access repository. Now let's start with some background on the context of in the need of for open access repositories. To set the context so that the audience know the conjectures and where conjectures are coming from, I would like to give you a brief background on how the idea of Solar came to be. In the mid-2017, Somaliland introduced the Digital Repository Services Initiative, which is a home-ground project to support the member universities in setting up their own digital repositories to publish the student thesis as well as faculty research output. The idea was to deploy one for each of the member universities and then aggregate it under one operated by Somaliland, which will harvest the content from those repositories. Later, a plagiarism checker and a plagiarism checker would be deployed to help battle the plagiarism within Somali member institutions and other Somali higher education institutions. A paper presenting the idea of the federated digital repositories was published by Somaliland at UbuntuNet Connect conference in 2018. So why is the deployment of Sorare important at this time? First of all, there is a lack of repositories where local research output is published. As raised earlier, showcasing research output is a key indicator for the member universities as credible institutions. Secondly, there is a limited research visibility by the universities across Somalia. Third, research output databases and analytics platforms such as Scopus show a very limited and insignificant research output from our country. Thirdly, putting research work out there in a transparent and accessible manner is seen to drive the quality of the research work. Both improvements in terms of quantity and quality are important to us. Providing access to the research output will attract constructive criticism and reviews that will eventually help in the improvement of the quality of the works. And finally, since the publications by the universities are not mostly available, on the international commercial research databases, it is difficult to control what we refer to as the internal plagiarism. There are no localized measures to fight plagiarism, and this repository will help us meet this goal. The project aim is to build a homegrown plagiarism checker on top of the Sorare platform, hopefully. About the opportunities, once we realized the need and we got motivated about why we were to build and deploy the Sorare repository, we had several opportunities that enabled successful deployment of Sorare. Among these include the partnerships we formed with key players in the open access and fair principles compliant commons repository sphere, most notably our partners at INFN and the University of Catania. Also, the support of UbuntuNet Alliance in mobilizing the digital object identifiers and cloud infrastructure that is hosting supporting services such as the secondary services, secondary DNS services, and the video conferencing platform. We also had our own team that were capable of absorbing the knowledge and the guidelines provided to them and using the skills and knowledge to set up the repository. Of course, there is always growing demand for the digital repository within our community as the research production efforts bear their fruits and sharing the findings are required. About the implementations, for the for platforms like this one, content is a king. So the value of the repository is determined by the quality and quantity stored within it. This is in turn is driven by the communities we build around the repository. Luckily, Somaliland has a community as one of its core pillar in our mission, and this will be used to drive the quick adoption of Sorare. Right now, as it stands now, we have conducted 2 introductory workshops for rectors, heads of member institutions, and also ICT directors and librarians. 9 communities have been created with over 30 publications. Sorare is open to non-Somaliland users also, thanks to the concept of communities which Zenodo adopts. Every submission on Sorare gets a digital object identifier for easy identification. Also, we have developed the technical guide for our member universities so that they can easily use the platform. About the system, Sorare has been configured and deployed using the synthetic procedure to replicate the INFN open access repository, which was originally written for deployment of Natri in Ethiopia also. As Robert told, Sorare is using Zenodo and Invenio and it is one of the leading technologies, and it adopts one of the leading technologies in the domain of digital repositories. Of course, it relies on containers and container orchestrators for maximum reliability and scalability. It uses Docker and also Kubernetes. Sorrel, of course, it supports DOI, so that every submission is being minted and used, a very powerful feature with this version. Also, it is compliant with FAIR principles and also compliant with Plan S requirements. For the lessons learned, technical feasibility is important. Otherwise, once the resources you depend on start disappearing, it will bring the work to a halt and the project will fail. A good example is our case when we tried to use DSpace and we did not have any resources to continue the development. We also, it is not easy to sell open access principles to anyone because it needs time to promote the idea and convince the institutions that it is best to be open about their publications. Also, plagiarism is another pandemic in our country, and most, I think, in Africa and Middle East, that's severely affecting our institutions. So openness and open access, I guess, is the weapon to fight plagiarism. A centralized approach to ASREN and national level repositories is more effective than having a number of federated repositories. That's why we opted to have a centralized digital repositories. The centralized approach involves lower maintenance costs and, of course, efforts. So what is next for Sorrel? Some of these activities you see on the screen were supposed to be completed early this year. However, due to the pandemic and also the political climate in Somalia, because of that, we could not be achieved all of these, some of them. So we are also thinking of bringing in governmental institutions and agencies to contribute to the content and knowledge available to Sorrel, especially the knowledge materials that are of public interest, produced or co-produced by the ministerial level advisories and expertise and their host institutions. And last but not least, on behalf of Somaliland and the Somali research and education community, I would like to thank Professor Roberto and his colleagues at INFN and the University of Catania for their selfless support. We can never pay back the value you contributed to our efforts to serve our community. But they say if you can't pay it back, pay it forward. So Somaliland is ready to support organizations in the ASREN, UbuntuNet Alliance, and WACREN regions who are willing to deploy fair compliant, fair principles compliant digital repositories like Sorrel. As Roberto said, we are already collaborating with the Palestinian ASREN in the ASREN region to install their own digital repositories. That is the end of my presentation. Thank you so much for listening.
Shukran, and thank you, Muhammad, and thank Somaliland, and thank Roberto for supporting Somaliland and the others. So we look forward to further collaborate with, and congratulations for your achievements. Let me go back to the agenda and see if still Binhali, can you speak? Can you hear us? Or
yes.
Are you ready?
Yes, the presentation is there, Yusuf.
Perfect. So let's go to the other experience from Ethiopia, and it's the floor is yours now, please.
Thank you, sir. I'm Bahai Korma from Higher Education Strategy Center in Ethiopia, and I'm senior researcher. I'm going to talk about brokerage given towards a fair compliant in the ASREN region, the experience of Ethiopia. Here are the outlines of my presentations. I think, are you listening me?
Yes,
No?
yes, perfect.
So my screen is already shared?
Yes.
Yes, clean screen.
Thank you, sir.
Go ahead.
History, what we achieved so far, NADI services, hands-on trainings, bootcamp next steps, and summary and conclusion. You know, Ethiopia is a very largest country, as you all know. We have more than 1,200 million people currently. And in our higher education landscape, you know, in 1999, we had two full-fledged universities. Now we have more than 52 government-owned and other more than 86 higher education, private higher education institutions. You know what happened? Where we had four universities in 2004. Now we had 52. Then when we expand, we have got lots of problems concerning to all plagiarism and other issues that a friend of mine from Somalia is raising. Here are the problems that we face. Concerning to researcher, we have lots of resources, but they are fragmented, and there is lack of streamlined thematic researches. Plagiarism, as most African countries, especially in Africans, we have faced these challenges. Some of, the people graduate with one paper in 2-3 universities with one thesis. So this is one of the issues that we face. The intellectual property right, also the other, and also lack of visibilities of our scholars, another issue. And there are also challenges faced by the universities. Similar research is conducted in 3 or 4 universities with similar objectives, but since we don't have a platform to share before NADI is in place, this is one challenge. The other is in Ethiopia we use harmonized curriculum. So we have almost similar curriculum across all these 52 universities. So just to share materials, we need to have one national repository. That is, the other is also the gap between teachers. Some of the teachers, like in Addis Ababa University, can have professors, associate professors, but when you go to in far places like Samara, Jijiga, you can come up with staffs with BA, staffs with lecturers. So, for us to share these all issues, we need to have a repository. Hello?
Yes, behind.
Okay. Then I would like to talk about the history of NADRE. So NADI is, before we come up with NADI, we have some sort of events that we participated. The first one is March 2016, promoting open science in Africa. In Dakar, one of our staff were there. But the most important issue were raised there. And also in November 2016, we had also a workshop on SciGuide, workshop held in Addis Ababa. At this time, there was a concept note was written about the national repository, and at this time, Professor Roberto gave us a chance to change our document into use case, and we have been able to attend the Lagos Research Work and Research Art Fest. Then the same issue also done in February 2010 Ethiopia Research Art Fest, which is held in Addis Ababa. This time also there are many use cases were presented, and many issues were presented. Among us, the academic digital repository of Ethiopia is one. And the same also goes to the other. In February 2018, NADI Kickoff Conference is held in Addis Ababa. At this time, the outcome of this conference was GIZ open tender for service provision of the implementation of NADI. And in June 2008, our beloved, very respected man, Professor Roberto, wins the bid, and we started implementing National Academic Digital Repository of Ethiopia. And after that, also we had in August 2018 the workshop on research data stewardship and infrastructure with the collaboration with the University of Vienna. We had this in Gondar, and there are lots of issues were entertained at this time. And the other, also we came up in 2019 data storage training for librarian, data managers, scientists, as well as repository engineers, also took place in Catania University of Italy. In June, September, training for trainers program for implementation of data management plans have been conducted. These are all, so these all conferences and these all activities have the output. The most important thing, the first time Ethiopia has national open access policy of the Ethiopian for higher education was developed, and also national academic digital repository of Ethiopia also developed. You know, since in the inception, the prototype has been done in Lagos and as well as in Addis Ababa, and these are the National Academic Repository website and also the manual, as you have seen. And there are services under NADI, to mention them, NADI service repository we have Inveno, we have Agenda, we have Indico, we have Forum, we have Discourse, we have Wiki, we have Media Wiki, we have platform for MOOCs and OpenEDX as well. We had also trainings, actually, many trainings, very hands-on trainings in 2018, among them library carpentry workshops, ORCID IT, DOI workshops, NADI conference for librarians, research data stewardship, legal issues, so data management plan workshop. These all are due to the outcome of NADI, we have also done. And the other is, the most important is that we have with even Roberto and his team themselves, they go to Jimma, Aksum, Jilla universities, and Gondar, we selected them based on their directions as well as their capacity. And we had hands-on training, a week trainings in this for each universities concerning how to use NADI and those NADI services. And also we had boot camp at Catania University in 2019. One NADI manager, myself, librarian from Gondar University, one system admin from Ethiopian Education Research Network, and 3 other software developers from Ethiopian Research Network also participated in the conferences and the boot camps, and we have been there for 2 weeks, and we had lots of experiences there, how you can customize Nedo and other stuffs as well. So we have learned a lot at this time, and we visited many areas which is related to this job. And what is the next step in NADI? Training for institutional repository managers and data stewardship also done. Training of data stewardship to assist scientists and researchers in the use of open science and open access. Training in leadership and governance of NADI. Bringing visibility of Ethiopian researcher outcomes also the other issue. So to summarize all, NADI has become the key for the Ethiopian higher education sector to participate in the international research community. One, the other is NADI links Ethiopia University with the top research university in the world. We assume NADI updates researchers and scientists about the most recent research outcomes around the globe. And also NADI bring visibility to Ethiopian research workers. NADI opens the door for the Ethiopian students to high quality online education from elite universities. NADI will guide the Ethiopian society into citizen science. And we want also to thank Professor Roberto Barbara, who is, I can call him as like, he assists us like a father for Ethiopia, and we recognize him. And actually, we sent to our minister also. We are preparing even a letter for recognition to him, and also his teams, Bruce, Mario, Rita, and others, and also our own staff. Dr. Margaret also plays a significant role for this to happen. And thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much, and let me congratulate you, and again thank you, Roberto, and others. Let's move ahead with our agenda. Let me invite now our next speaker, Helena Kuzin. I hope she can read her name again. Spell it right.
No problem. Don't worry.
She will be speaking about how to become a DataCite member to mint digital object identifiers for fair research outputs. So the floor is yours, please.
Well, thank you very much, Youssef, and thanks so much for the opportunity to present here today. I'm really happy to be able to participate in this workshop. As Youssef said, my name is Helene Kousijn. I work for DataCite as the Director of Community Engagement. And in my talk today, I will talk about assigning DOIs for fair research outputs. Let me see my slides. There we go. Seem a bit slow. So for those of you who may not know DataCite yet, DataCite is a global non-profit membership organization, and we work with over 2,000 repositories around the world to provide persistent identifiers, specifically DOIs, for data and other research outputs. And our vision is to connect research through the persistent identifiers, and I think you will also see that later today in the workshop, to identify knowledge. And this is a diagram showing how we do that. And that temple-like image that you see on your screen is an institution. And so institutions, universities, research institutions join DataCite as members to be able to register DOIs. And as you can see, they can register DOIs for a range of different research outputs, so that research outputs don't just disappear because they sit on someone's laptop or on an external hard drive, but they really become part of the research ecosystem. And then when they have that persistent identifier, they can be connected to other kinds of research outputs. And also they can be discovered through their unique identifier and through the accompanying metadata. And for the institution, it becomes much easier to track what's actually happening with their outputs, whether people are viewing the outputs, whether people are reusing the outputs, and that information then feeds back into the institution again. And that way we provide value to our members. And what we hear most often from our members is that it's very important to them that we make their research outputs discoverable. And that discoverability comes from the unique identification aspect of the identifier, but also very importantly from the metadata that is registered with the DOI. And that metadata is openly available, can be harvested by anyone. And because of that, the data and outputs can appear in search engines and can be found by other researchers. It also is easy to follow best practices. We have a system where you can register a DOI in less than a minute. So you don't need a lot of technical skills. You can just get those DOIs. And they really help you to make your outputs fair. And I have another slide on that. And then, as I mentioned, the tracking and reporting aspect is also very important. It's not easy for institutions to know exactly which research outputs are generated by all the different researchers. And the DOIs help with that tracking and knowing where the research outputs are, what the research outputs are, and whether those are being reused by other researchers. And a couple of other speakers also had slides on FAIR, so I think I don't need to say too much about what it is. I just really want to highlight here that persistent identifiers play a key role in all aspects of FAIR. So to make data findable, it's important to assign a globally unique and persistent identifier. And through that identifier, data are then also accessible. And through the metadata that come with the identifier, data become interoperable. And with rich metadata and, for example, license and reuse information, data also become reusable. So assigning persistent identifiers is a key step if you want to think about fair data and fair research outputs. So about the DataCite community, I already mentioned we're a membership organization. Right now, we work with over 2,200 repositories, and these repositories are located in 46 countries around the world, and these members have already registered over 25 million DOIs with us. And how our membership works is that there are two types of membership. There is direct membership, where an organization joins DataCite directly to assign DOIs to content within their own institution. We also have consortium membership, where one organization is the consortium lead and provides DOI services to a range of external organizations who can then benefit from the expertise of within the consortium and of the consortium lead, and can register DOIs for content within their own repositories. And in Africa, and I think this was also mentioned, of course, you have ASREN, WACREN, and the UbuntuNet Alliance. We've been having conversations with all three organizations. We're very pleased that the UbuntuNet Alliance joined DataCite earlier this year. They are now leading a consortium for Eastern and Southern Africa to enable organizations there to register DOIs. And yeah, we're really happy that we're also collaborating with ASREN and WACREN, and we hope that we will be able to take that same step with them, where they can also lead consortia for their region to make it easier for organizations in the region to start registering DOIs. A little bit about the how. I already mentioned we provide DOIs for a range of research outputs. As you can tell from the name DataCite, we really started from data. When DataCite was founded, that was because we thought it was really important to have persistent identifiers for datasets. But over time, that broadened a little bit. So we provide DOIs for datasets, collections, workflows, and software, but also for grey literature that sits in repositories such as theses, preprints, reports. So that's all possible. And now I can imagine that that may lead to the question, what is then the difference between Crossref and DataCite? Because I'm sure many of you are familiar with Crossref as well, and the DOIs that are registered with Crossref for articles. And so last year, Crossref and DataCite sat down together to clarify this. And this diagram was the outcome of that. And so what we think is that if you're using a publishing workflow, whether that's an academic-led journal, a university press, a publishing house, then it makes sense to join Crossref as a member and assign Crossref DOIs, because they have services that are better suited for that kind of content. But if you're depositing content into a repository or onto a platform, and that can be a domain repository or a data repository, an institutional repository, or an academic sharing platform, then DataCite is a more logical fit for you. And we provide three ways to create and manage DOIs. We have an open API that can be integrated with to automate DOI registration. Then we provide a manual interface, which I already mentioned. There you just log in and you can register DOIs manually. And then we also have what we call a service providers program, where we work with platforms that provide DOI registration functionality, and where you can then use your own member credentials to register DOIs, but you use the functionality they already developed. And that's also true for example, Invenio, which was mentioned a couple of times, but also DSpace. They've already built that integration with DataCite, and you can then use your own member credentials to register DOIs using their platforms. And here you see briefly our web interface. This is where you can manually create DOIs, but you can also see statistics on DOI activities. We do link checking to check that DOIs continue to resolve. And this is also where you maintain and update your organization information. Then we build some services on top of the DOIs and the metadata that are registered with us, mainly focused on discovery and connection. And the metadata are really key here. So I also wanted to mention that we have a metadata schema. This is maintained and updated by a metadata working group consisting of members. And we now have version 4.4 of the schema. So it's constantly evolving based on member needs and input on what what is needed within the metadata schema. We have mandatory fields, recommended fields, and optional fields. And of course, the richer the metadata is, the better. And if you, for example, entered creators with an ORCID, it becomes easier to connect outputs to researchers. And if you enter affiliation information through, for example, a raw identifier, we can connect the outputs to institutions. And under recommended, you have a related identifier field, and we will also be looking at that again later in the workshop. That you can use to indicate relationships between, for example, your data set and other data sets, or your data set and software that was used to generate the data set, or data sets and articles, to really start creating those connections. I mentioned discoverability is very important. So metadata are available under a CC0 license. That's not related to the license of the actual content of the data set. I mean, that's completely up to the repository and the researcher, but the metadata submitted to us, we make that openly available. And that means that metadata can be harvested and is available through, for example, our platform DataCite Commons, but also through OpenAIRE, through Google Dataset Search for datasets, and Clarivate's data citation index. So that really increases the discoverability of outputs. And then the connection aspect is very important. Within the EOSC project Freya, over the last couple of years, we've been working on something that we call the PIT graph, that really connects all these different entities within the research landscape. And in the metadata, we already know about the relationship between A and B and C. But now, because we're connecting everything in a graph, we also know about the relationship between A and C. And this means we can ask new questions about all the research outputs from a particular institution, but also, for example, all the data sets that came from research funded by the European Commission and whether these were cited. So it gives a lot of new information about research. And within DataCite Commons, which is our main discovery interface, you can find information about all these connections that sit in the PIT graph based on outputs, based on people, and based on organizations, to really, yes, get more information about your work. So I will stop there. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here today. I'm always happy to follow up, to have further discussions. So you can always reach out at info@datacite.org. Later today, we have a more interactive part. If you have any questions about that, about your DOIs, you can also contact us at support@datacite.org, and we can always help you with your workflows. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Excellent presentation, and hope discussions come later. Let me now invite our friend Margaret from Ethiopia. She will speak about open access policies and governance models of fair, compliant, relational repositories, the case of Ethiopia. So let me invite you again, and the floor is yours, Helena. Sorry, no, Margaret, sorry.
I'm now unmuted. Thank you very much for the invitation to participate in this event, and thank you very much also for having Ethiopia, the Ethiopian experience, in such a prominent position here. I will talk a bit more about the experience, what we have here in Ethiopia. I have to say, the National Repository, the National Academic Digital Repository in Ethiopia is not only with the Research and Education Network, but it's also with the Higher Education Strategy Center. And myself, like Mr. Behailu, we are from HESC, from the Higher Education Strategy Center. And we focus very much already on the management, on the training, on the dissemination of the NADRE in the country, whereas the Research and Education network focus very much on the technical part of NADRE. Yeah, I will walk you through in brief the objectives what we have behind this research on governance and leadership for the repository, then some definitions, the standards and principles of information. This is, I think here we have then to link with DataCite that we can learn more about that we become more professional. Then we have the FAIR principles and how we have tried to implement the FAIR principles here in Ethiopia into the framework and the overall framework. And then governance and leadership in NADRE, what we are doing, what are the next steps, and then I will wrap up with the conclusion. Our a brief insight to the NADRE, what we have here, two screenshots. The first shows the number of artifacts, what we have, or documents, what we have uploaded to NADRE by June 2020. We have 10,322, and we have then in the second screenshot, I show you the communities. We work with 78 communities right now here in Ethiopia, and the 78 communities, these are the universities, and each university, each public university is linked with the NADRE, and within the universities, there are the faculties, and some faculties, they have their own communities in NADRE. A brief, not really introduction, but Mr. Behailo already mentioned the chronology of the NADRE. We had more or less until 2019 the development of NADRE, and then in 2019 we handed over formally the NADRE to the Research and Education Network. And since that time, NADRE is formally a storage place for documents, artifacts, and is used by universities in general. NADRE is also visible, or artifacts from NADRE are also visible on the OAI BMH, on ROR, Open Door, and Open Air. That means we really can say it's now the window, Ethiopians' research window to the world. But nevertheless, there is quite a challenge what we face, and this is to bring NADRE alive, that it's a tool, that it becomes a tool for researchers and also for university research managers. And for this purpose, we have conducted research on governance and leadership for NADRE. The objective of this research is to find out the most suitable approach for open access policies and governance model of fair, compliant national repository, and how the national repository could impact the research management and leadership. And here we try out to make NADRE, or the open repository, more attractive for researchers, that it becomes the first source of consultancy for researchers for new research projects and so on. Some terms, we had to define some terms. Of course, many terms are coming from management in general, but if we work with data and information, we need somehow a more sensitive definition for that all. And in literature, not so much information has been shared so far about data governance and information governance. It seems it's still a very new topic. And we see on one side, researchers are seeing the data governance as a process. Others seeing the data governance as the execution and enforcement of authority over the management of data and data-related assets. And a third approach we have, and the third approach is focusing on the framework of principles to create people-centristic processes for governing federated data that achieves measurable improvements and changes in culture and behavior. I want to be a bit brief on that. Of course, we could talk a lot about the governance issue in for data and information. I would like to refer here to the complexity of this topic, and this complexity is demonstrated by the knowledge area view. And I think this is also at the very beginning of the exploration internationally. We have not discussed a lot internationally about the data governance and its link to the knowledge areas explicitly. I think this will become then the research for the next months and years. The other topic, what is very important and causes a lot of difficulties everywhere, is the ownership, the focus on ownership of data and information. And this is explicitly that what Mr. Mohamed has mentioned as well, plagiarism. It was also the driving force in Ethiopia to introduce repositories, the national repository in particular, to fight the plagiarism. And if we talk about plagiarism, we have to talk about ownership of data, ownership and data and information. The creator of information and data is the owner and has all rights about the data. This is a legal term, more or less. We can refer to that. But on the other side, it's much more complicated to talk about ownership on data. This implicates that the owner has to manage the created data and information throughout the life cycle of the data. But there are legal experts working on that, and I think sooner or later we will have really a comprehensive work on ownership of data. On the other side, a creator of information and data can transfer the created data and information to a third party. This is like a deal in business. But no money is involved if we bring this to the university, and the university becomes then the custodian of the data. What are the rights of the custodian on our data, what we have created? Then, of course, it's also the life cycle, outdated data, new data, updating data, and so on. A lot comes along with this custodian, how to say, the custodian management, yes. And then digital objective identifiers. Here, I think we have to work much more, because now we are at the very early stage, and Elena showed us DataCite, and I think we have to explore this every researcher has to know what is behind. Of course, we have then also the data stewards assisting us to guide us through that, and should become also part of the data management plan. But this is something what we have to explore in a much wider way. Until now, NADRA itself is at the very beginning. And then, of course, ORCID. We also try that every researcher has his ORCID account, and ORCID account is then also indicated in the metadata. The next point is then the leadership. And here I found a definition. Leadership is the process of defining current situations and articulating goals for the future, making decisions necessary to resolve the situation or achieve the goals, and gaining the commitment from those who have to implement these decisions. It's a very business-like definition, but as we can see, librarians and researchers and all in this environment are not really aware of that. We have also to stress the leadership on data and data management. Leadership is the execution of the governance guidelines. We can have the best guidelines, but if no one is respecting the guidelines, if they are not implemented, if rules are ignored, we have no value from this, or we gain no value from these guidelines. Leadership contributes to success, reputation, or failure to repositories. That means we can have the best frameworks, but if no one is respecting that, there is no leadership, it's for nothing. And then leadership includes the management of factors such as human resource, technologies, laws, and regulations. At the end, leadership is more or less the umbrella, how to bring all the factors together. Coming to the standards and principles of information and data quality management applicable for open access, open data, and open science. First, we should see the standards of information. And here also literature is there, but I think this will become a topic in the next years. Information right now, or the research on this topic is right scarce. What I have found is from Hanninen, Luomen, and Nitronen from 2020, and they have collected definitions of information standards from different sources. And I picked out 3 possible definitions what could work for our approach. Information standards define how organizations collaborate and exchange information to realize more benefits from inter-organizational collaboration. Our information standards are set guidelines for how organizations coordinate technical interoperability to reduce uncertainty and spur growth. And a third one, information standards are more specifically compatibility standards as formal or informal agreements regarding how distinct components of a specific technical system interact and interoperate. Yeah, let's take this as it is right now, and I have put out principles of information, and here I refer to the National Archives, where I could find the information about the information principles enable organizations across the public sector to become increasingly aligned in their use and management of information, drawing on their own local strategy and practices from a common set of principles and best practices. So I leave it with that and come to the data quality management. And data quality management, in brief, DQM, is built on data governance as a framework for management decisions. The DQM rules and decision areas are brought together in a data governance model. The decision areas of data quality management refer to the data quality strategy, the data quality organization, and the data quality architecture. And the interaction between the decision areas and the roles are described as responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed. And in brief, it's called RACA. That depicts the kind of responsibility a role has for a specific data quality management activity or decision. Now, comparing the usefulness of FAIR principles for data governance. Data and information on open access repositories have to follow the FAIR principles. This we have heard many times, and there is nothing to oppose to that. It's just to stress over and over again that we have to follow the FAIR principles if we want to have a good repository, a good tool for our researchers. There is the discussion whether these can be uploaded to repositories if data collected for the research published in the thesis is not provided as database. This is a common discussion. We have no solution here in Ethiopia right now. Interim solution is we don't upload. That at least we have the thesis uploaded. And then it is a leadership issue that the repository manager and data management plan advisors respectively data steward guide researchers to provide the database in the quality of the FAIR principles. In Ethiopia, we have a framework already on data, which we use now as the framework for data governance. And this is the National Open Access Policy of Ethiopia, higher education. It's online, please feel free to download. Behind that, what we have not published on NADRE is that we also have worked then for the institutional repositories, a guideline. And this is an advice. Universities can use it or not, because this is not in our influence. We focus on the national repository and not on the institutional repository. And if the national repository is used as institutional repository, then for sure the guidelines are still with the university management and not with the NADRE. Then coming to the daily work of a NADRE manager or a repository manager here in Ethiopia. And we face quite some challenges here. First of all, the team is composed of the Education and Research Net manager, then we have the Higher Education Strategy Center, then we have the university presidents, then we have the university librarians, and then those, in my understanding, the most important people for the daily work are the data stewards. And but nevertheless, all the stakeholders, they provide guidance in order to manage the repository in line with the repository governance. And here we have the focus on the availability, on the usability, integrity, transparency, and security of data and artifacts in the repository, and the purpose of consistency in the different faculties and institutes. Also, the common understanding about the repository. This is very important for us as well, because not everyone has the same understanding from the national repository and from the institutional repository. We focus on the national repository and we have our own guidelines. Then the quality of provided artifacts and data. Here, I think we have also to work quite a lot, and there will be also quite some potential to interact then with DataCite, where we have the gray literature and so on. And then compliance with the rules and regulations of the provision and ownership of the artifacts and the data. Maybe here I want also to share the status of Ethiopia, where we are. We have conducted a survey. It was just before the universities have closed in 2020, how universities are using the NADRE. And we found out that it's very much at each university is with the librarian ICT responsible and linked then to the Ethernet. We have discussed in the train-the-trainer activities in 2018 and 2019 the data stewardship positions, but we found out that none of the universities have implemented these positions. And then, of course, the data management plan is not in place. Our data management plan activities are not in place while we had done already the activities, the training activities in 2018 and 19. But somehow it's also the COVID situation what led us to a certain delay. But nevertheless, we have the tools, but not implemented yet. In brief, leadership in NADRE. NADRE is Ethiopian University's research window to the world. This has been mentioned already. NADRE should become the centerpiece of national and international research collaborations. The leadership NADRE impacts on one side the staff assigned to the repository, and on the other side it is the management of NADRE, and then the explicit communication strategy about the use of NADRE is required in order to make NADRE as a display for national foci. And here we focus very much on that we can publish the number of new publications contributed to certain topics, then to find the most popular topics of research within a period, and to find published research topics with national economic indicators, culture, and or other particularities. And I think here again I have to refer to DataCite. I think they can be of big help for us to make this possible, that we have somehow another management information system what we can share with the universities and specifically with the Ministry of Science and Higher Education here in Ethiopia. In conclusion, it is an imperative for repositories to have a data and information governance framework in place that clarifies how to create, store, share, dispose, and manage information and data. Repository leadership is structured in the leadership inside of the repository team and outside of the repository team. This means outside is the communities of researchers and external stakeholders. And good governance and leadership of a repository supports the quality of national research as well as the possibility to direct research to a nation towards national strengths such as nations' economic performance, identity, culture, and particularities, etc. And I would like to close with the remark that repositories need a business-like approach in terms of governance and leadership. And the FAIR principles describe the quality of the repository. With that, I thank you very much. Thank you.
And I do agree with the last two statements. I do agree, and not to because we spent much time. I could not stop anyone. So thank you everyone who spoke. I thank you very much. I could not stop anyone because you are coming to speak and to send your message and so on. So there is no time left for questions. I'm sorry for that. And even we have took about 15 minutes from the other session. So allow me by this session to stop, to conclude this session by thanking all the speakers and hand the mic to Raed to chair the next session. Thank you for joining and for listening.
Thank you very much. And yes, thank you very much. Now, please allow me to introduce Mr. Atiq Nuruddin. He is from the Institute of Scientific and Technical Information from Morocco. And please, Mr. Nuruddin, if you can start your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Raed. Thank you for this opportunity to let me talk about our national thesis repository in IMIST, the Institute of Moroccan Information, Scientific and Technical Information. So I am the Technology. I'm the head of the collection development and librarianship, national librarianship in IMIST. And I'm going to talk about our national thesis repository called TUPAN. So I hope you're. Is there a problem with the microphone? No.
No.
Oh, it's okay. Please go ahead.
Okay. Okay. So our national thesis repository is was launched in 2007. It was part of a government policy to promote the academic research, and it was academic research in Morocco. It was a result of collaboration between IMIST researchers, national higher education institutions, especially the universities. It was designed to be unique access to all theses of Morocco. It's a platform based on DSpace. Its major objective is to collect and make theses defended in Morocco electronically accessible, as well as not only defended by Moroccans in Morocco, but abroad as well. And it provides the bibliographic description of thesis and also the full text of the documents if available. So here are some statistics that we collected since the creation of the platform, more than 13,000 theses, and our communities involve 12 universities, as well as the entity abroad for the universities abroad, and the visits amounts for 200,000 and more. And full text, we have received 1,500 full text documents to be published, authorization published, and we have a couple thousand downloads, and we have visitors coming from more than 100 countries. So for the collected thesis by university, there is a certain disparity. We have two major players in communities: University of Rabat and PAS. The others, not so much participants in our platform. This is part of our challenge in this platform. So we have a thesis ecosystem in our institution based on TUPAN, which is based, of course, on DSpace, and we have another platform which harbors the ongoing thesis, or we can call it the preprint thesis, it's called Atrohati. It's on DSpace equally, and we receive also the paper documents of the thesis, which we harbor in our library, and it is indexed in our ILS of the library, which is under COA. And we have a project to have satellite repositories in the universities to be under the platform DSpace, but it is still in the project. So we have some challenges for the publication, challenges with the universities, especially legal challenge, which is publication authorization. So for each university, it has a charter. This charter, force or don't allow a student to defend his thesis unless he submits the publication authorization for the INIST, for our institution. We have two examples here. The example of University of Hassan I of Stat, and University of Hassan II of Mohammedia Casablanca. In the red circle, you see the obligation for the student to send a copy of his document to electronic document, a paper document, to our institution. There is a problem here since the ratio of authorization to submission is not high enough. In 2020, for example, here as you see, we have 23% of authorization, and 77% there is no authorization for the document. We have some challenges as well as projects that we are planning to carry on. There is a pilot project with the universities, with a handful of universities, to create a shared server for the thesis publication and authorization, since it is an issue for us. And there is a project for a merger of the thesis platform under TUPA and the ongoing thesis platform, which is under the Authority platform. And we have a project to upgrade this space that we have to allow for more options, for fair principles to be implemented, since we already have an outdated DSpace version. For the opportunities for our fair compliance, we have findability. We are already having a project to integrate the DUI to our DSpace, to all our thesis under DSpace, since we already have a project in our institution that allocate to each periodical. We have a national periodical repository that allocate to each to DOI to our periodicals, and we are pushing for registering our platform in open directories. For example, the open directory of open access repositories, and we are planning to integrate the ORCID as an identifier for researchers. And there is a push with the universities, with the collaboration of universities, to push for public access thesis and to do off with the problem of authorization. And there is a push equally for the richer metadata of the thesis. And in accessibility, we use as much as possible, we use the open access software and protocols, and talks are ongoing to improve the submission process electronically, as we have mentioned previously. And there is more engagement for the universities in the process of submission. As for the interoperability, there is a reference to other metadata, since we have in our ILS, there is we are planning to integrate more interoperability between the ILS and the DSpace to allow for more conversion between the two protocols, the Mars 21 and the Dublin core. And for the reusability, there is an enrichment of metadata description. We are planning to do so, and integration project with the Authority platform, as we mentioned, and we are encouraging more visibility of the thesis through the library catalog. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Atiq. And please allow me to invite Dr. Darrell from KAUST University, Saudi Arabia, to present now.
Thank you, Rad. Can you see my slides now?
Yes, please
Okay.
go ahead.
So I will jump right into showing kind of the beginnings for our platform. In 2012 was as a DSpace repository just for theses and dissertations, as other examples have heard. And on top of, other than the platform itself, we provided very limited services. And so we thought of the repository mostly as the technology platform. But since then, we've changed some of our thinking about what is our repository service. That started in 2014 when our university adopted an open access policy, and we started to think about what the library and the repository should be doing to implement that policy, to be able to know about all the publications affiliated to our university and to our researchers. And that's when we decided to pursue use of ORCIDs. The thinking was partly to use ORCIDs to search for the research by our researchers, but also to identify our researchers, especially our students, by tying their ORCID ID to their thesis. So at that time, there was no support at all really in DSpace for ORCID. So we worked with our vendor who is hosting the actual DSpace. And that's something I should have mentioned, is that from the beginning, we left the system administration and the hosting of the DSpace with a cloud service provider. And then we are just providing the services around that. And that's been an important choice for us. So we went ahead and we added some ORCID features into DSpace, and then we set up a separate service outside of DSpace for our researchers and students to actually register their ORCID ID and identify it for us. And then this separate tool in orange is what would actually interact with the ORCID service. Since then, we've added more services like this. Also in relation to the open access policy, we've added this research output tracking service, which tries to keep track of anything affiliated to our university or our researchers that's published somewhere. And then we've also started offering some research data support services, especially around data sharing. And as part of that, one of the things that researchers would ask us is they would say, oh, our journal has been requesting that we put our data in a repository that gives it a DOI. And so we added the DataCite DOI registration service. And again, we did it as a service that's sitting outside of the DSpace platform. Though DSpace does have some support for registering DOIs, it's not very flexible. And part of our philosophy of having DSpace hosted by a service provider in the cloud is for us not to customize it or modify it too much, so that in the future we can keep upgrading it more easily. And instead we focus our kind of local customizations and more flexible requirements in these peripheral services. So I'll talk just a little bit more about the ORCID and DataCite services, as those are the ones really related to the persistent identifiers and related to making research more fair. The basic technical setup is that we use the OAI PMH to keep track of the new items and the modified items in our DSpace service. And then we interact with the ORCID service or with the DataCite service, and then we come back and we update our DSpace through the DSpace REST API. This has been a pretty useful approach for us because we can basically leave DSpace. We keep it as stable as possible and try not to change it except for when we're ready to do some major upgrade. And then we have a lot of flexibility in these local systems as far as what we want to do. The ORCID integration does have some changes that are required in DSpace. And this is the part 1 here where there's a patch released by our service provider Atmire that you can apply to DSpace 5 or DSpace 6. And it makes it so that you can display ORCID IDs in your DSpace, and also that the ORCID IDs can be managed through the DSpace REST API, because that support is not in the normal DSpace. Then the second part is what is our local service, and the code for this has also been made public, and there's also some more information there at those links about how it is set up. For our registration of DOIs with DataCite, a couple of the things that we are able to do with setting this up outside of DSpace is that we can include the ORCID IDs in the metadata transferred to DataCite, which we couldn't have done through the default DSpace support for DOI registration. We would have had to modify DSpace, which is something we try to avoid doing. And then we also can have some more flexibility about only registering DOIs for certain items. Especially we want to avoid registering DOIs for preprints or other unpublished items that will probably have a DOI from the publisher in the future. But we do issue DOIs for our theses and dissertations and for data sets, and especially for things like posters and presentations. And then also by having this as a separate service, we can kind of customize how we send emails to the users to let them know that, oh, a DOI has been registered for your item. All right, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Daryl. And please allow me to invite the last speaker in this part, Dr. Al-Walid Al-Khajar, to talk about their experience on Qatar National Library. Please, Dr. Al-Walid.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, yes.
All right. Let me just present this. I'm just going to close the video for a second. And all right. So good morning or good afternoon, everybody. I'll be talking to you today about the goals of Qatar National Library in building a repository. What's different between us and probably what we heard so far is that we don't have a repository yet. So in my presentation today, I'll be talking about Qatar National Library. I'll be talking about potential roles of what a repository should do. I'll talk briefly about our design approach, and then give an example of how the research repository is being built, and talk about next steps. So our library is quite young. We only opened our doors in 2018, but something happened in 2019. We saw that our members are using our digital resources more than our print collection, and this trend, of course, continued in 2020 due to COVID and restrictions to visiting the library. So if we learned anything from our experiences in the last 2 years, from closure of libraries around the world to remote work and education, is that digital content has become more valuable as a result, and providing continued access with clear terms for reuse and reuse is more critical than ever. So at the heart of the mission is the development of culture of reading and learning that will bloom in the current generation of Qataris and locals and continue in the far future. Our vision is to create an environment for learning and discovery, and to be a preeminent center for learning, research, and culture. But Qatar National Library has multiple roles. As a national library, it aims to capture and safeguard the nation's documentary heritage for a heritage library. We also have a public library function, and our goal is to make knowledge accessible to patrons from all over walks of life. And of course, a research library that aims to support the developing research landscape in the country. In addition, we have the Qatar Digital Library, which oversees a digital repatriation program. So building an ideal repository is complex. And what this implies in complexity is that any repository, a perfect repository, should be able to handle a wide variety of content and file types, along with variable storage capabilities, curation capabilities, providing variable access and licensing requirements based on the type of work, of course, and it addresses multiple audiences and user types. To say the least, designing a repository that is ideal is challenging and time-consuming. So how are we approaching this? Our approach, would like to say, is like a modular design. So to implement different yet complementary solutions for each role of the library, from public, heritage, national to research, and to combine them all at one point in the future as one user interface, possibly even one technical solution. Of course, the question is always build versus buy, or license in certain cases. So building is one solution that will allow us to build something to our liking. Still, it may take time and require more intensive human resources, more people, a bigger team. The other option, to buy or license, would get something ready-made, maybe faster. It might be more expensive and not always customized to our liking. Or if you want it to be customized, that would be even more expensive. So we also want to avoid a vendor lock-in situation. So any situation from the market must allow for changes, for us to change vendors at one point or migrate data. So a key consideration for us is to ensure the sustainability of the service offered while finding an optimum balance between our capacity and expectations from our stakeholders and patrons. I'll talk about the research repository as an example, which is something that we've started working on with the Qatar National Research Fund, or the local funding agency here, or the national funding agency. The idea is to build a repository that can host research data and publications of those of which is funded by the funding agency, but also all the open access articles that the library funds and supports. And we have adopted, so we've licensed this, we've licensed the solution, we have adopted software as a service model for implementing this repository. And we want this platform, and it's still in progress, to use the existing Microsoft Azure-based cloud storage provided by the library, in which we keep control of the data. And this is really our exit strategy if we ever need one in the future. And we think that this is easier to do right now than build something from scratch. We want to see how it works for a couple of years and see if we're happy with the solution or not. Along with infrastructure through, as I mentioned, we have certain policies in place. So we have a systematic approach on policy level to support the uptake of the repository by researchers. We're working on a data management policy with the funding agency. As a library, we'll be also responsible for reviewing the content of submitted research data management plans. And we don't want it to be just a repository, but we want to offer good quality output. And the idea is to work with researchers to ensure good quality of data And of course, the metadata, we're working on to make it very data compliant. We're also working on putting a research data policy in place to enforce good practice. We hope that this makes the repository more sustainable in use. We want researchers to use the platform not because they have to, but because they understand the benefits. You know, it'd be interesting for us to know how other countries, and I think we've heard some today in the region, on how the different policies are implemented. Lastly, a comment on future plans. I mentioned to you what we're doing with the research repository, but as I also mentioned, we have different functions in the library. So we're working together right now with the Heritage Library to see what do they need from a repository, and we hope that at least these two systems can combine or merge at one point in the future. Because of different scopes, different material, the repositories are decoupled at the moment. And because of different file types and requirements, from multimedia to culture to research data, we're decoupling it and we're looking at each separately with the hope of combining this and adding more functions in the future that can support other roles in the library. For us, really, we're starting to do this, and it'll be interesting for us to know what others are doing when it comes to libraries with multiple roles. I know we talked today about libraries with a research capacity, a research heavy focus, but from our context, it's a bit different. It's more complex. So we really want to know what others are doing in this field. With that, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I'd like to thank the organizers. And I also want to extend my condolences to our colleague Raed for his loss. I'm sorry for your loss. And with that, thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Al-Walid. Thank you very much. We are lagging the agenda, so we'll turn immediately to the third part, which is the hand-on. And it will be my honor to again invite Professor Roberto to be the convener of this part.
Okay, thank you very much, Raed. So, okay, I hope you can see me in a moment. In the meantime, I will share the screen. So this is gonna be an interactive part. So let me show. So in this presentation, we are going to do several things. We have 1 hour or so to complete all this tutorial. So as a preliminary step, we'll see how to access the repository. We are going to use the Somali National Repository that has been presented before. And then in the second part, which actually in the first part of the first part will be just a preliminary step to access the repository. And then we have 3 parts. The first one, we will show how to upload contents on the repository. In the second part, we will see how to claim research outputs stored on the repository from the ORCID profile of the author. And then if time allows, we will see in the last part how to connect research outputs to other research outputs using DOIs and using the Zenodo functionalities. And then at the end, we will see how to get support, because in principle, once you have access, you are welcome to use the repository even after this presentation and this workshop. These slides have been created especially for this event. Here you can find the wall how-to, which contains also other parts which for time reasons are not included in this tutorial. So the first step is to access the repository. So you have to go to this link. This is the link to the repository that we are going to use. Let me open the link. Let me show you what you are going to see. Sorry. Okay, I close the window. Let me make it bigger. Okay. This is what if you go to the home page. This is what this is what you will see. So please open your browser and go to this link. And once you are on this link, click on login. So if you click on login, then there will be another window where you have to select your identity federation, your organization. So click on login with your organization and choose for those who already have federated credentials, may discover their own identity providers in Italy or internationally in the EduGame. Those who don't have federated credentials, they should go to this grid IP and select IDP Open as identity federation. For those who already requested credentials, and then IDP Open and then login. So let me show again. Go to the repository, click on login, login with your organization, select your identity federation. If you don't have any, select grid IP, then IDP Open for the identity provider, and then you are redirected to the login page where you have to put your credentials. And then you should be here. Okay? So please try to do and let me know. I mean, you can open your microphone and let me know if you have any problems to log in on the repository. Let me see the chat. You can also write in the chat window if you want. If you have any problems. Would you please confirm me if you are in? Let me put again the, so this is the address, login, your organization, grid IP. If you don't have any, I mean, if you already requested the federated credentials from the IDP Open, as indicated in the agenda, and then you put your credentials and then you get in. Okay. Okay, Mohamed is going to help me. So if there are any problems, write in the chat. Yeah, thanks, Mohamed, for copying also the address to the chat, the address of the repository to the chat. Did anybody manage to get in? I hope you already have federated credentials or you requested some in advance, because without federated credentials, Unfortunately, we cannot get into the repository. Let me know if you are trying to log in. Mohamed, could you check on the repository if you have new users logged in the administration panel?
Okay, let me check.
Yeah. Just to understand if people are trying, if they have problems. Because I see some upload this morning here, this new one, but I don't know if people are trying right now. Let me put again the workflow. You have to go there, click on login with your organization. If you already have, for example, for people from Italy, you can choose item. Otherwise, from other countries, through EduGain, you should be able to find your own identity provider. Or if you don't have any federated credentials already, you can, and you requested before attending this workshop, you can go to Grid IP, then select IDP Open, and then be redirected to the login page and get in. Any new user?
I'm on it. I will update you.
Okay, thank you. We can wait for more time to let you complete the login. In case you don't have, federated credentials, you may get here, this is not immediate, but I mean, if you don't have any federated credentials, you can go to this address, fill this form, and we can see if we can get you some federated credentials as soon as possible. So I don't know if any of you got in, so I would suggest to wait a few more minutes, and then we can go through the presentation in any case to show you what's possible with this repository and how you can upload contents and connect content to your ORCID ID. This was meant to be a hands-on tutorial, but we need to have you in the system.
Yes, Roberto, I only see one person who has logged in today, so it is etech at cnrst.
Okay.
.ma.
So
Yeah,
this is from Morocco.
One person.
From Morocco. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I would suggest anyhow to go through these slides just to show what's possible. And in any case, the slides are attached to the agenda, and if people are interested, they can always get the credentials at any time and follow this tutorial to upload content. So let's let me go back to the presentation. So once you are in, what you can do, okay, what you can do is you can update your profile. So here you click next to your username, and then you click on your profile, and then you fill your profile, you put your username and your full name, and then you can update your profile. And the username is important. You can choose the username you want, and this is useful because this is tracked when you will update content or you will curate communities, because everybody can create communities and can become curators of the community. So now, once you complete the login phase and we can move to the second part, which is the how to upload contents. So as we said in the previous presentations, SORER is the Somali Somali repository is already interconnected with DataCite, and each content stored on SORER gets a DataCite DOI. So for this reason, we strongly recommend you to upload real contents. So not just fake content, but real content. Not forcefully publications. Could be images, could be presentations, but things that you are author of and that belong to you and are not just a test. Okay, so let me go to the next slides. So in order to upload one record, you need to go to the home page of the repository, click on upload, and then on new upload. Once you are here, and then if you upload for the first time, you are not going to see anything here. If this is not your first upload, you will see here the previous uploads that you have done. So in the first case, for the first upload, click on a new upload, and then you choose the file you want to upload. So first you select the file, either clicking here or dragging and dropping here, and then you start upload. Then the second step in the upload form is the choice of the community. So we devoted a specific community for researchers not belonging to Somali universities. So here you need to put external contents, but in principle you can associate one record to more than one community. But for this tutorial, the recommended community is external contents. Then you need to choose the type of upload. So there are several types already available: publication, poster, presentation, dataset, image, video, software, lesson, or other if your uploads is not belonging to any of these types. And for the publication, if you click on publication, you may refine your choice, putting here what kind of publication are you going to upload. So it's a book section, journal article, a report, software documentation, thesis, and whatever. So for publication, you can add more information on your upload. Then next step in the upload form is to, if you are uploading a new content which doesn't have any previous DOI, you can leave these two fields completely empty, because DOIs are automatically minted. So you should not need a reservation in most cases, unless you are uploading something which already has a DOI. Then you have to put, of course, the title, then the authors in the standard, in the family name, comma, first name, the affiliation, and then, this is important, you can add your ORCID ID. So the 16 digits of your ORCID ID. And including ORCID ID is highly recommended. If you do not have any ORCID ID, you can move to slide number 27. Otherwise, you can jump to slide number 30 when you go on with the connection to your ORCID. Otherwise, you continue. So other fields in the upload form are the description, so the abstract or any other kind of description of your upload. You can specify a specific version, otherwise you can leave it empty here, and the version 1 will be assigned by default. Then you choose the language. So basically you start typing the language, and then you will get a cascading menu. You select your language, and then you confirm. And then you can upload, then you can define keywords. Keywords are additional metadata to your upload. And it is very important that you add the one keyword per line, not many keywords in the same line. So one keyword, add another keyword, another one, and so on and so forth, as many times you need. Then you can choose the license. So Zenodo allows for 4 different access rights: open, completely open; embargoed, this means that the upload is closed for some amount of time, and after that it will become explicitly open; restricted, restricted means that you protect your access, but people will see in the list, and interested people can send you a request to access the content, and you can either grant or deny access to your content. And the access is not permanent. It can be up to, if I'm not mistaken, up to 11 months, but you can renew as many times as needed. Or last option, you can define closed access, then only the title of the of your contents will be visible, but the rest of the upload will be invisible in the repository. After the after write, you have to specify the license. Many licenses are available. If you are going to upload some open access content, we recommend to use create. I mean, if you are uploading publications or theses or data sets or this kind of contents, we recommend Creative Commons, any of the different licenses belonging to the Creative Commons licenses. If you are uploading software, we recommend you to use software licenses, and there are many available. You start to type a license, you choose in the cascading menu, and then you confirm. Then you can associate a grant to your upload. There are several funding agencies available. European Commission is the default one because this is actually comes from Zenodo, but there are other funding, other funding agencies that can be selected, and then you can put the name of the grant. You can start typing a grant number or a name, and again you will get a cascading menu, and you can select your grant, and you can associate the grant with your upload. Of course, if you choose European Commission, you put here a grant number only if your upload refers to an EU funded project. So that's the last part of the upload form. You can add additional metadata to your upload. For example, you can add references, journal, if you are uploading something which is published in a journal, conference, book, thesis. You can add additional metadata concerning the supervisor, the graduation date, and other information or subjects. At the end, when you completed all this, you can save here, and to save all your forms, all your metadata, and then you publish. And if you publish here, you will be requested to accept the upload, and you will be reminded that the upload will get a DOI, and then once you confirm, your upload will be stored on Solr. After that, the curator, you will receive an email saying that the upload has been committed, and the curator or the curators of the community or the communities that you have selected will be notified that you are asking for your upload to be part of this community, and they can either approve or deny the addition of your upload in the community they are curators of. And if the request is accepted, your upload will become visible in the page of the selected communities. So I don't know if any of you are following, but I think that it's useful in any case to go through the different functionalities. And this is part 2. Mohamed, if you don't mind, I'll give you the floor for this part.
Yeah, sure.
You just tell me when you want me to go on with the slides.
Okay. Okay. In this part, we will see how to connect your works using ORCID. As you can see, ORCID is an open global non-profit organization run by and for the research community. It allows you to become unique among the researchers in the world. So Roberto, please let's go to the steps, to the next slide. So if you want to register for ORCID, you can go to the next slide, please. Yeah, if you want to create an ORCID ID, then you can go to this website and then register. It will take you, I think, less than a minute. You need to follow like 3 steps. First, you need to register to fill your personal information like your email, and then set a password for your account. And then the next step will be the security and notifications. First, you create an ORCID ID password, and then you may choose, the visibility, like maybe you can say everyone, trusted organizations, or only me. I think most of the people, more than 80% of people, they choose just everyone. If you want, you can only choose a trusted organization or only me, and then you accept the terms of use, and then you just make sure that you are human, and then register. After that, I think you will get an email. After confirming the email, then you will be able to log in on ORCID. After that, then here we will see how you can add research outputs to your ORCID profile. Actually, we can use 2 options here. First, you can use maybe the easiest option, which is to just add using add DOI option, which is very simple. The second part is using the search and link wizard within your ORCID profile. This one will allow you to enable auto update so that all future outputs with DOI and ORCID in the metadata are automatically added to your record. Of course, after permitting or allowing ORCID to update your profile. I mean ORCID and DataCite, or maybe any other registry that you are using. So to do it, I think we can see it here. We have 2 options. So the first option will be to first scroll down and then click on Add Works. After that, then you can select Add DOI. This is the first option. So after clicking this, you will get this text box that you can maybe just type or copy and paste the full digital object identifier URL or just the identifier. And then you can click Retrieve Work Details. After that, it will show you the submission or the publication that you are looking for. You may need to check the identifier value, the identifier URL, and then you can just maybe set the visibility and so on, and then you can add to the list. After that, it will show up on your ORCID profile. I think this one is the easiest one. That's why we make it the first option. So after you just add to the list, you will see it like this in your ORCID profile. Here you see we have one work, which is Somali Research and Education Repository Quick How To. So just like this, it will show up in your ORCID profile, and everyone you share with your ORCID ID will be able to see, the works or publications that you have made. The next one, it will be to use the search on link feature. I think currently, as Helena told me, that DataCite is moving from the search.datacite.org to Commons page. So maybe there are some issues with this feature at the moment, but I hope that they will resolve this issue soon. That's why we are just covering it. So this one, it will allow you to automatically add new outputs in the future outputs. I mean, after just successful login to the ORCID, you just need to go to the bottom and then choose Add Works. This time you will choose Search and Link option. After this, you will see the list of all registries. Then we are interested here, the DataCite. as your search link and wizard, and then it will take you to the next step. If you see here, you know, I mean the commons page of the DataCite, and then we need here to get an ORCID token so that we authorize DataCite to update our profile. Then we have to click get ORCID ID token. After that, it will take us to the authorization part. Here you have to read carefully and then authorize DataCite access for your ORCID profile so that it can add or update other information maybe about you, like country, keywords, and etc. Also, it will update your research activities like works, affiliations, and so on. After you authorize, then you will get these commons or settings page. You have to make sure that auto update is enabled here, because if you don't check the auto update here, maybe you won't get the future submissions to show up automatically on your profile. So if you, in case it didn't, in case it is disabled, maybe you can click update and then enable it. You should know if you enable the auto update, future outputs with DOI will also be added to your ORCID record automatically. And I think that's the end of this part.
Yes. Thank you very much, Mohamed. Thank you very much for explaining part 2, and then we will quickly go through the last part, which explains how to connect the research outputs to other research outputs. So first, once you uploaded your first research output, then you can go back and upload a second one, which has the relation with the first one. So you can go back to slide number 13 if you need help and upload a second research output. You fill all the fields of the upload form for the new research output, as we have seen before, and then you can come to the next slide. So one of the frames, one of the sections of the upload form is the one concerning related or alternate identifiers. So you can add relation between what you are uploading right now, which is this upload here, and what you already have either on the same repository or somewhere else. So imagine that you want to say that what you are uploading is connected to another you upload. So you put here the DOI of your previous upload or the DOIs of another research output that is stored somewhere, and then you choose the type of relationship. And Zenodo offers this relations by default. So for example, you can say that what you are uploading now is, so what you, for example, is, so you put here another upload, and then this, what you are putting here is cited by this upload. So what you are uploading right now cites here this external contents that has a relation with. Then you can provide all the other information, you save and you publish. And I think that I can show you an example of this. If you go to the sorter here, let me go to the community external contents here. So all the presentations given today are on the repository, and we can see here, for example, where is here, this, yeah, this one. This is the presentation from Daryl from Saudi Arabia. So you see that this is the presentation, and here are the related identifiers. So this is part of this one, and I'm opening in another tab so you can see. So this is actually the proposal for this workshop. So this presentation is part of this proposal, but this presentation has also references, and you can see some references are on Zenodo. So you see the Zenodo DOI prefix. Some others are on the KAUST repository in Saudi Arabia, and others are somewhere else. So for example, I can open here the one in Zenodo and the one on KAUST, just to show you examples. So the rationale is that this presentation that you have watched before is related to this software, which is on Zenodo, and with another content with this presentation, which is on the Saudi repository. So that's the way you can use DOIs to connect research outputs to other research outputs, and that's easy. And that's easier than to connect, for example, publications with datasets that are used in the publication, with software that is needed to analyze the data, and so on. And you can combine all this, all these elements of a given research using this concept of relationships between DOIs. So now let me come back to the last slides. So once you upload your second upload and you define the relation, what you can do, you can go back to the first upload, edit it, and reference to your new upload, so that they are cross-linked. So you start with one upload, you upload a second content, you put the relation with the first content, then you go back to the first content, and then you create the relation to the second content, and so on and so forth. You can create this web of relations between your research outputs. Okay, so this is how this part works. Last slides about the support. So if you are going to use this repository and you have some problems, what you can do, you can go to the home page, scroll down, and on the bottom, at the very bottom, you have this link, support. If you click on support, you are redirected to a web form where you select the category of the problem you have. There are several already pre-prepared. Then you describe the problem. You can even upload the screenshots or error messages of what you get of describing your problems, and then you can send a request. And then the managers of the repository will get your request, and they will check it, and then they will reply to you. So usual support form, and where you can, as I said, select the category of the different problems. So that's it. I don't know if any of you have tried, but I think that it's very important that we went through the slides, and also the video recording will be made available. So if you want to test and use the Somali repository for your own research contents, you are very welcome to do so. So I think I can stop sharing here and give the floor back to either Youssef or Raed for the conclusion, unless there are questions from the audience.
Yes, thank you, Roberto. Well, let's give a chance for the Q&A for all the three parts, if anybody of the attendees. Thank you so much for being patient with us and for this long workshop, and hopefully all slides and the hands-on part were useful for you. And please, if you have any question.
Yeah, you can write the question in the chat, or you can open your microphone and just ask the question the way you want.
And maybe to clarify about updating your ORCID profile, as Mohammed mentioned, you're able to do that directly from the profile, and also using auto update, it will be automatic. And DataCite is in the process of transferring the direct updates from our system from search.datacite.org to comments.datacite.org. So in the future, you'll be able to update your profile directly from comments.datacite.org.
Thank you very much, Elena, for the clarification. Any other questions or comments? Otherwise, I think that I give you the last word, Red or Youssef, for the closing, and then I will stop the recording.
Yes, thank you. I'm not sure if Youssef is here or with us. Okay. Anyway, I think there are no questions. The presentation and the workshop and all presentation are recorded, and I think Roberto will share them with all attendees or all who registered and could not make it and attend this workshop. And contact information for all participants are available. You can reach any of us through email. And thank you all for being here. Thank you for all who participated, and for attendees, for your being patient for this long workshop. Roberto?
Yes, thank you very much. I mean, I join you in thanking all the speakers and all the participants, and I think that if any of you is interested, I mean, through the agenda page, you can contact us, and I will email you the link with the agenda and the link with the video recording, as it will be ready. So I will stop video recording right now.